Hello, and welcome to the 29th episode of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is, where we talk about actresses who may have come close to earning Oscar nominations, but were ultimately overlooked, omitted, or for one reason or another just didn't have the votes to make it into the final lineup, and discussing why they may have deserved to get in, and why they ultimately didn't. Each episode has its own theme, presented as a double feature, and this week we're going to be covering two performances from actresses who are major contenders to be nominated at the upcoming 98th Academy Awards. And my guest today is a dear friend and a fan favorite, I would say. She is the associate editor at Awards Watch and co-host of the wonderful Oscar Wilde podcast. You have heard her on the main show of my show for the Best Actress series, joining me for 1937, 1974, and 2013. Welcome back to the show, the one and only, a far cry from the worst person in the world, Sophia Ciminello.
Wow, thank you so much, Kevin. It's so funny because we will be talking about today how I relate to that film. So thank you, though, for saying I'm not the worst person in the world. I am so happy to be back. I love coming on your show, no matter the topic. And especially, I think, digging into performances from some of our favorite actors. I think really unpacking any trauma in those performances. I think, of course, about 1974, but I'll leave it to you to do the lead-in connection to another episode that I've been on and how trauma will come up again in that way.
Trauma. Yes. Always trauma. Well, yes. Let's get right into it here. So I presented to my patrons at And the Runner-Up Is list of 15 past performances from current Oscar-contending actresses. And the options were Jessie Buckley in Wild Rose, Laura Dern in Inland Empire, Regina Hall in Support the Girls, Nina Haas in Phoenix, Jennifer Lawrence in Mother, Jennifer Lopez in Selena, Wunmi Mosaku in His House, Gwyneth Paltrow in Proof, Renate Reinsve in The Worst Person in the World, Julia Roberts in My Best Friend's Wedding, June Squibb in Thelma, Haley Steinfeld in The Edge of 17, Emma Stone in Easy A, Tiana Taylor in 1001, and Tessa Thompson in Passing. And the top vote getters were Renate Reinsve and Tessa Thompson. You are a patron, so I'm curious, who did you vote for in this to expose you?
Yeah, I mean, we always game the system a little bit here just to see.
It gets pretty hardcore.
Where the votes might be going. Yes, very hardcore. I think initially I wanted to do a little one battle pairing with Regina Hall and Tiana Taylor. I thought that could be really cool, and I love both of those performances, and I think they're a bit under-discussed, really, and I think they both feel almost like they're out of the 1970s, which I really like. But then I would say, I can't remember where I ended up landing with my votes. I think I went with Renate Reinsve and Tiana Taylor, but I love Tessa Thompson's performance too. She would definitely be, I think, in my top 5 of those great performances that you listed. I think there's such an eclectic mix, and whenever you put out those polls, I truly never know how they're going to go because we have so many great options across different genres and time periods and so many favorites there. So I'm glad it worked out with these two, though. I think we're going to have a really good discussion today.
Yeah, there is so much that we can get into about both of these performances and movies, and they're both from 2021. So they do kind of work out in a way to be talking about that race yet again. A messy Oscar year that we have talked about in the past on the Best Picture series, talking about The Power of the Dog. Thankfully, we can avoid that and talk about a different angle here. But also worth noting, both Renate and Tessa are now nominees for the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama for their performances this year. Renate for Sentimental Value and Tessa for Hedda. Also worth noting here, two other actresses that got pretty sizable support from the patrons were Jennifer Lawrence in Mother, once again coming up short, and Regina Hall in Support the Girls. So, I would love to talk about those two one day, but today is not that day. Renate and Tessa were very much like the chosen two.
Love it.
Yes. Yeah. Before we get into them, would love to know from you, Sophia, what your thoughts are on how these actress races are shaping up this year. We could talk a little bit more about Best Actress, obviously, but just curious which contenders you feel are sort of rising to the top and in this stage, and also maybe too whether you think some of those past performances I listed might even help them this year in sort of building momentum to get these nominations.
Yeah, that's a really good question. This year's Best Actress race, I think, is one of those where we do have a really clear frontrunner at the moment in Jessie Buckley for Hamnet. She was actually, I think, anointed when people saw the movie at Telluride, and despite, I think, some mixed responses and reactions to that film online, I don't think that's going to stick when it comes to the industry. It's a really powerful performance and something I think that checks a lot of boxes off. Like when you look at the history of Best Actress as a category, and I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory sense, I think it's a really great performance. And then I do think, though, that Renate Reinsve is really strong for Sentimental Value. It's a very subtle performance. It's also predominantly non-English language, which I think can be rare in this category and in its history, but always exciting when it does happen. I think that she will actually benefit from her performance in The Worst Person in the World also, because that is a bigger performance. She's definitely the central character in this film, as we'll talk about, and she won the Best Actress prize at Cannes, which I think really established her as a new face, really an up-and-coming performer from Europe that American audiences could really attach themselves to. I think we have a lot of great contenders in the race this year. I really love Chase Infinity, of course, for One Battle After Another. I think Regina Hall and Tiana Taylor, while they're in supporting, I think that their past performances certainly don't hurt. I think that people really love the work that they've done before. And then I think with people like Emma Stone or Jennifer Lawrence, or I think really popular big stars that are in the race, their films might be a little more divisive, I think, this year, but we certainly can't count them out just because of how much Oscar voters really love them and how their work is really consistent, really across their filmographies. It's funny because I think you can really connect Mother and Die My Love, but Begonia is so different from Easy A, and I prefer Easy A Emma Stone 10 times out of 10.
Same.
And then as for Tessa Thompson, I just feel like I wish that Hedda always would have been Amazon MGM's priority, because I feel like they really focused on After the Hunt and Julia Roberts at the beginning of the season, but then that film had such a poor response, and audiences at TIFF and critics since have really responded well to Hedda and to Tessa's performance. So I wish that that was really the distributor's priority from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a really good sum up of the lay of the land, I would say. Also, I do think I am cautiously optimistic about where we will land ultimately with the lineup. I think there are more good to great contenders this year than there usually are, I would wager. Usually I find myself not really vibing with some of the contenders, but I feel like generally speaking, we are bound to get a pretty good lineup. And it's also just kind of wild to look at the confluence of performances here that are dealing with motherhood and like these mothers dealing with these deeply high stress circumstances related to motherhood, like Jessie Buckley, like Rose Byrne, certainly. And If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Jennifer Lawrence, Die My Love. And then even with like Renata for Sentimental Value or Chase Infinity with One Battle, it's like these daughters who are dealing with difficult relationships with parents. So I don't know. It's just a fascinating trend that I don't know exactly what I would chalk that up to, culturally speaking. But it's also like, I think, you know, most of these contenders have really compelling career narratives that I think is really helping people invest in them. Like the excitement over Rose finally getting this huge moment of recognition that she's been deserving for so long, or Chase as this major discovery. Like there's a lot that is worth investing in here. And I think, yeah, as of now, I would have Jessie Buckley as the front runner just on the strength of Hamnet and her performance. Feels like a decidedly more sympathetic performance than some of the other contenders we have. But Rose Byrne coming on really strong, and that would be such an exciting win if that were to happen.
I love Rose Byrne's performance in that movie so much. It's funny because this year at Telluride, I saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You and Hamnet back to back. And it was just such, whiplash between the types of mothers portrayed on screen, or the ways, really, not the types of mothers, but the ways that women, I think about their children, or how what they're going through in life really affects how they show up as a mother, and just the pain and honestly horror of that process. Like, I think they're both so good at that. And Rose, so much of the film is just focusing on her face, right? Not seeing her child for the majority of the film. That's that smart directorial choice. But Rose, I think, really holds that, and it makes sense that she's winning the lion's share of critics' prizes so far.
Yeah. So ideally, we have a very interesting Best Actress episode to come. But
fingers crossed.
yes. You never know how things could dramatically shift. But let's get right into it here. Go back to 2021 and assess here Renate Reinsve in The Worst Person in the World.
Nei, for tiden så virker det som om alt liksom feil.
Nei, alt ikke feil. Det jævlig invaderende at du går gjennom søppel.
Ja.
Det forstår du.
Jo, men kan du bare slappe av?
Slappe av?
Ja, kan du ta det med ro?
Slappe av. Det du jævlig god på. Du kan slappe av og servere kaffe til du 50. Jeg vil noe mer!
Okay, so Renate, I have yet to cover on this show until now. So to introduce her here, she was born in Solborgelva, Buskerud in Norway. And as she was growing up, she sort of stumbled through a variety of jobs until she settled on acting and became a theater actress in Norway. She made her film debut with a small role in Oslo, August 31st, the Joachim Trier film, playing a character named Renate. And she continued in Norwegian film and TV and was more or less an obscure actress to audiences outside of Norway until she had this massive breakthrough with The Worst Person in the World, reuniting with Joachim Trier. So this film was devised with her in mind. Joachim and his longtime collaborating partner Eskil Vogt wrote this specifically for her, and this also marks the third film in their Oslo trilogy, which are these 3 standalone films set in Oslo after Reprise in 2006 and the aforementioned Oslo August 31st in 2011, all of which are very loosely connected only by theme and all happen to feature Anders Danielsen Lie. And so by the time Joachim called Renate to have her play this juicy lead role, she says that she was contemplating giving up acting like the day before she got that call. But Joachim was just so struck by working with her very briefly on Oslo August 31st that he knew he wanted to work with her again somehow, and the rest is history. So, Worst Person in the World is a romantic dramedy, leaning more drama, which follows the life of Julie, played by Renate, a young woman who is still trying to figure out what she wants in life. We see her constantly changing her focus, changing her major in college to start, eventually landing on wanting to be a photographer while working at a bookstore post-college. She gets into a relationship with a man named Axel, played by Anders Danielsen Lie, who is 15 years her senior and a noted comic book artist. And we see how she struggles to move forward in her life and contemplates her priorities with wanting kids or whether she wants to stay in this relationship with him, which is complicated when at a party she meets a man named Eyvind, played by Herbert Nordrum, a man who is also in a relationship, and they kind of playfully flirt with each other before parting ways, but she still finds herself thinking about him as he does with her. And there are further complications from there, which I'm sure we will get into, but that's the general setup. Let's jump in here. So much to discuss here. Thoughts on Renate Reinsve as an actress and her breakthrough performance here.
Yeah, so Renate Reinsve to me is a very special actress because she reminds me a lot of one of my all-time favorite actresses, the late great Diane Keaton. They have, I think, this natural ability to play with comedy and drama and to just make things feel very grounded and real. And I think it's also in the way that Renate and Diane both, through their characters, play with and tackle insecurity. I find it very moving and relatable. I first saw Renate in The Worst Person in the World when I saw the film at Cannes. So I went to Cannes this year in 2021, and then again the Sentimental Value year, which is very funny. I told Joachim Trier when I saw him this year that he needs to make another movie every time I go to that festival, just because I need one every single time I go. But this movie will just always be special to me because I saw it at a time in my life where I was approaching 30 and we were sort of coming out of COVID. Things were very strange still. Like, we were getting tested going into the theater. It was just a weird experience overall, but I feel like I was very unmoored in my life. Like, I just didn't really know where I was going, what I should be doing. And I don't think you should have to necessarily personally relate to a film in order to get it or not. But I kind of instantly saw myself in Julie from the opening frame. Like, the pre-med bit, I was a pre-med major, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
I used to think I could be a science person. That's hilarious because I am just I'm such a liberal arts person to my core, as you know. Like, it's just completely silly. But that line in the movie about her going into medicine because she wanted her grades to mean something, I remember being like, whoa, okay. And then just pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, being a little bit lost, going from man to man without any kind of real commitment at first. It was like, oh, we're going to RuPaul's library. Like, this is a real thing I'm witnessing, where I just felt very understood by this character. And I think that Renate and Joachim's collaboration is just so smart and authentic in giving you a portrait of this woman as she's navigating certainly romantic relationships, familial connections, right? How she views herself in relation to her mother and where she was at that point in her life, and to her absent father, but also the relationship that she has with herself and how she views herself in the world and how that changes throughout the film. So it absolutely makes sense that the role was written for her. And in speaking with Renate this year for an interview I did for Sentimental Value, she talked about how when they conceived of this character, she was supposed to be, a bit naive and just floating through the world, but she has that realization at the end. So we'll talk about all of that. But yeah, love Renate and this movie. It's very, very important to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love your connection to this. I mean, this is a film for me, too, that is just right up my alley. The kind of young woman self-actualizing, figuring out her priorities, led by a great actress. I mean, it's catnip for me. And for us, I should say.
Yeah.
So I really liked this performance so much on first viewing, even though I felt like it was also a much subtler performance than I was expecting, perhaps, which didn't necessarily make me feel like it was overhyped. But like, when she didn't get the Oscar nomination, I couldn't say I was like surprised or like overly upset per se. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought she gave a really great performance, but it didn't feel like undeniable necessarily. But watching it again this past week, I hadn't revisited this since 2021. And so like living 4 more years of life really in between, I feel like it really deepened my appreciation of this performance. And now I find myself angry and feeling like this is yet another injustice at that year's Oscars, quite frankly. I mean, yeah. Renate, like, now having seen her in this and like even things like A Different Man, which she did in Hollywood, or Sentimental Value, she is such a gifted naturalistic actress. The way she communicates just this sort of swirling of emotions within her with just a look, like, it really is remarkable to me. And I think she has just a really great evocative screen presence because of her eyes. Really, like the way she just locks in with another character, or even just watching her standing alone and the camera being fixed on her, like, you can't look away. I find she is just so strikingly beautiful, but also has such a deep soulfulness to her too, that it makes you empathize with her, even if you haven't specifically been through these same struggles. Of like, even when her character is being frustrating or like maybe a little hypocritical or flawed, you can see what is motivating her to act in that way without the film needing to necessarily telegraph that. So I think that also is speaking to her collaboration with Trier, is like her trusting her to communicate all those things.
Yeah, and so much of this performance, like you said, is through her eyes. Her most powerful moments, I think, in the film are when she's not really saying anything at all. You're just observing her and how she's reacting to a situation around her. Like, I think about when she and Axel are at that like weekend getaway situation early in the movie, and his friends are very clearly at another stage in life, and he's talking to her about how he wants to have kids one day. And there are two things really that happen here that show how she's feeling. One, there's this moment when she's outside and she sees him inside the house with those kids, and her response to that, again, there's no dialogue, but you feel there's something in her that's thinking, yeah, he would be a good dad, but am I the person to give him those children, or is that what I want? And then that other moment when, all of his friends, I think they're in what they talk about, they're very intellectual, they're at another stage in life, clearly. I think they have different interests than her. And to go to Diane Keaton again, because I just watched Reds, I think it's very relatable in how Julie and how Renata conveys this, of how you feel when you're in love with someone, clearly, but also totally in their shadow while you're in search of your own identity. And she is communicating that again just by how she's sitting there, how she's listening, when she chooses to chime in, what she is saying and how she's saying it. I think that's something she's so good at as an actress.
I agree. Just, again, like beyond even the technical aspects of what she's doing with her eyes, there is just such an authenticity to Julie, really, in every single action she takes or doesn't take, which, a lot of this, I think, speaks to a very millennial experience of being in your 20s and feeling listless and being handed this plethora of options for what your life can be, and how nice it would be even to just have somebody to tell you what your path is. And just be like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I think that is something that really resonates with me, is this recurring sort of theme of her looking for that right path where like everything will just fall into place and everything will now make sense. And if it's not working out exactly how she imagines it, or if she's not getting those answers, she starts to get restless. And I think that's this very human urge to like be in pursuit of that new path that will suddenly fix things, or that new relationship. And like the act of working towards that is something that is a little more satisfying than getting there and then sitting with that and being comfortable in that, Yeah,
that's the really hard thing. And there's that great line early in the movie too about her when I can't remember. I think it's Axel who maybe says it to her of, you seem to be waiting for something.
Yeah.
And that is just such a true millennial feeling, especially when you're coming out of school. Because in school, it's like everything is set for you. You have that schedule. You know what's coming next. And I think that's also why so many young people just want to go back to school and stay in that environment for so long, because it's set. And she knew she was good at that, right? Like the grades tell her, but now that she's out there in the world trying to figure out who she is, you're right. I think that pursuit of something is way more exciting to her and thrilling, right? And feels more comfortable than when she actually has something and she has to figure out, okay, how do I live with this? How do I be an adult in this relationship or in this situation?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so fascinating to watch her kind of in that restlessness, navigating that with Axel. And like you were saying, with that scene where they're talking directly about having kids, and he asks her kind of directly what she wants, and she can't even really answer. And she reacts in anger almost, and is just like wanting to put an end to this argument because she doesn't really know. She doesn't think she has good maternal instincts, I think she says. And I just really appreciate how, even with how early that is in the film, I think the brilliance of the writing and her performance is that you can read between the lines and detect that she is maybe even afraid that having a kid might actually end up being another regret or something that doesn't feel right and wishes to give up. But the trick with kids is that like you're kind of stuck with them. And so that's why it's so scary, you know?
Yeah. And I think for her too, it's a combination of things. Like for her, it's not just that she doesn't see herself as a mother, and we get a really heartbreaking tie-in, I think, to that later with Axel, but also her own relationship with her family. I think the way that she's treated by her dad and how in and out of the picture he can be, I think that creeps in, whether she wants to acknowledge that or not. And I think she sees children as something that makes her relationship with Axel possibly permanent, or that could damage that, or another area where she could potentially fail.
Thank you for listening to this preview of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is and become a patron. Only $5 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, exclusive polls, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.